American plants were too expensive, but the rocks were possible, as were the shattered trees, the immortelles and the moss. The arbour was opened up in places to give a view of the copse, which was full of winding paths like a maze. In the espalier wall they'd intended to make an archway beneath which the perspective could be revealed. As the coping would not stay up hanging in mid-air, the result had been a huge gap with ruins on the ground. I heard a trout jump in the river, a late jumper. The trout made a narrow door-like splash. There was a statue nearby. The statue was of a gigantic bean. That's right, a bean. Somebody a long time ago liked vegetables, and there were 20 or 30 statues of vegetables scattered here and there in watermelon sugar. A little ways from my shack, there is a statue of a potato. I don't particularly care for it, but a long time ago somebody loved vegetables. I once asked Charlie if he knew who it was, and he said he didn't. Must have really liked vegetables though, Charlie had said. Yeah, I'd said, there's the statue of a potato right near my shack. One morning, not long ago, after Andre had told me that she would be obliged to stay beside my mother, I was taking a short stroll with Albertine, who I found on the beach tossing up and catching at the end of a string a weird object which gave her the look of Giotto's idolatry. It was called, as it happened, a diavolo, and has fallen into disuse now. When they came upon a picture of a girl playing with one, the commentators of the future will surely discuss it. Beatrice stretched herself out on the long, pale blue elephant hide sofa, one hand playing with a fleecy pile of the carpet. The apartment had been one of her grandfather's pied-à-terre, and Beatrice's home since her parents' death shortly after her birth. She had been brought up under the superstition of her grandfather. His taste leaned toward the experimental and the bizarre, and Karen's often wondered how far his personality and its strange internal perspectives had been carried forward into his granddaughter. Over the mantelpiece was a huge painting by the early 20th century surrealist Delvaux, in which ashen-faced women danced naked with dandified skeletons. He drew a small package out of his pocket and placed it on a table in front of me. On it I read my exact address. I broke the seal and held in my hands a smooth leather case, grey-green in colour. Inside I found a small miniature, the strikingly original head and shoulders of a young man. In the 20 years during which we had not seen each other, I'd hardly thought once of this schoolmate. At first sight of this remarkable portrait, that considerable period vanished from my mind. I saw him again, the old school porter with his respectable-looking goiter partially hidden by a carefully tended beard. Again I saw myself surrounded by schoolboys, and one of them was Klaus Patera. Now it was no longer the purely personal needs of my heart that cried aloud and found strange, distorted expression in my vision. Now I found greater fascination in the universal life that mysteriously intermingles in men, animals and plants, in every stone, in every created or uncreated thing. As the sovereign's present madness became steadily worse, the people decided to visit the earthen statue en masse and implore it to remove the scourge at once. They witnessed and described the great procession led by the priests and dignitaries, which wended its way up to the Federal to offer long and fervent supplications according to special rites. The people were already despairing of the Federal when one morning, rooted in the palm of its right hand, the image displayed a small plant on the point of blossoming. Everyone without hesitation took this to be a remedy miraculously offered by the revered child to cure her affliction. Thanks to the alternation of rain and blazing sunshine, the plant grew rapidly. At the Tolstoy Museum we sat and wept. Paper streamers came out of our eyes. Our gaze drifted towards the pictures. They were placed too high on the wall. We suggested to the director that they be lowered 6 inches at least. He looked unhappy, but said that he would do it. The holdings of the Tolstoy Museum consist principally of some 30,000 pictures of Count Leo Tolstoy. After they had lowered the pictures, we went back to the Tolstoy Museum. I was eating a sandwich at the Tolstoy Museum. The Tolstoy Museum is made of stones, and many stones cunningly wrought. Viewed from the street, it has the aspect of 3 stacked boxes. The first, second and third levels. These are of increasing size. The first level is, say, the size of a shoebox. The second, the size of a case of whiskey. And the third level, the size of a box that contained a new overcoat. The amazing cantilever of the third level has been much talked about. The glass floor there allows one to look straight down and provides a floating feeling. Well, here it is, the old man announced, his hair dishevelled, his face inflamed by preternatural exaltation, his eyes sparkling and panting like a lovesick swain. You weren't expecting such perfection, were you? you're in the presence of a woman, and you're still looking for the picture. There's such depth on this canvas, the air is so real you can no longer distinguish it from the air around yourselves. The old fraud's pulling our leg, Poussin murmured, returning to the face of the so-called painting. All I see are colours daubed one on top of another and contained by a mass of strange lines forming a wall of paint. We must be missing something. Coming closer to discern in one corner of the canvas the tip of a bare foot. By the second week, where Heinrich Kurtz's picture had been hung, became so overcrowded that the organisers found themselves obliged to let in only 25 visitors at a time and to make them leave again after a quarter of an hour. This room had been arranged as an additional refinement to recreate Hermann Raffke's gallery as accurately as possible. One morning on Thursday of April 2nd, 1914, Raffke was found dead. His funeral took place a week later and conformed to the precise instructions he had left in his will. His body was mounted by the finest taxidermist of the day, brought in especially from Mexico, and was clad in the same grey dressing gown with red piping which he was wearing in Kurtz's painting. Immediately I repeated the experiment by placing my pen and charged it with India ink. I drew a jagged line 25 centimetres long across the sheet of Canson and even tore the paper towards the end of the stroke. I compared this pattern with the previous one and had to acknowledge the exhilarating truth. My method showed itself to be devastatingly effective.